What's up, guys? It's Josh back again with another episode of Fab 201. It's been a while. Pro Tour happened, and then I had a little bit of some medical issues, so I had to stay in the hospital for a bit. But feeling much better now. Ready to get back to this wonderful series, Fab 201. So today we're going to be continuing to talk about the art of war. This is a continuation of episode number 8. So if you haven't watched episode number 8, go watch episode number 8, come back here and watch part 2. So yeah, so the art of war, as many of you know, is a very famous book written by Sun Tzu about his philosophy of warfare, strategy, and tactics, and we're going to apply some of his most famous quotes to our own battlefield in Flesh and Blood. So let's just jump right into it. All right, so this is the fourth quote we've looked at, and Sun Tzu says, "Opportunities multiply as they are seized." All right. So how does this apply to the game of Flesh and Blood? There are certain heroes, and this applies to most heroes, but in particular, I want to bring up Ketsu, Dorinthia, and Kano, and this probably applies to Phi as well. I actually wrote this this PowerPoint back before the Pro Tour 1, so we didn't even know what the new heroes were at that time, but yeah, so these heroes have something in common in that if you do not block properly, or if you do not defend properly, if you do not have the correct equipment loadout, these heroes punish you massively. For example, Ketsu, one of the most important things is understanding his combo lines. You need to understand what the surging strike line does. You need to understand that Whelming Gust Wave draws a card, and especially later in the game, if he ever gets Lord of Wind off, he's going to shuffle all his threats back into his deck. So how can you deal with that? Well, you can bring some more armor, you can bring some defense reactions, or you can just not block particular portions of the combo line. Right? Same with Dorinthia. Dorinthia is another hero that really punishes you if you block incorrectly, especially with the new Glistening Steel Blade. There could be permanent game state punishment for blocking incorrectly. Finally, Kano, and this is going to also apply to the new Icelander, is that if you use your Arcane Barrier on the wrong thing, if you don't respect, for example, snap back or Aether Flare, or Aether Flare to snap back, if you don't know that that's a common play pattern from Kano, if you don't understand how to deal with the frost hexes and the frostbite mechanics of Icelander, if you don't bring some instances, or if you don't manage your pitch very carefully, you can run into a lot of problems. And these heroes are heroes that really punish players that are inexperienced or players that are reckless. And so, as Sun Tzu says, opportunities multiply as they are seized. These heroes all get significantly stronger, and in general, in Flesh and Blood, mistakes often multiply and opportunities often multiply. All right. So I also wrote here that better players tend to win longer games. Now, why is this the case? Well, in a longer game, you have more decisions. There's already a ton of decisions in Flesh and Blood, but if we go to the second cycle, especially, then things such as pitch stacking, your memory, your deck quality start to come into play. And for certain heroes, you can also notice their tendencies in their decision making. Especially as Dorinthia, this is very important. I need to learn what type of opponent I'm playing, whether they're less likely to block, more likely to block, how long does it take them to block? How do they utilize their defense reactions? These are all things that good players will pick up on, and the more data points that they have, they will be able to exploit that into an advantage. All right, let's move on to the next quote. Sun Tzu says, "He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces." Okay, so what does that mean? In this game, you're not always going to be on the winning side or on the side with the natural advantage. This game is not deterministic. There's not full information. There is variance in this game, right? So things like whether or not you go first or second, whether or not you draw good hands, which hero are you playing against? These are all things that you can't really control. Okay, so you need to be able to play with superior and inferior forces. This means you need to be able to handle your bad matchups, and you know how to, carry home your good matchups. You need to understand what to do when you're on the play, when you're on the draw. What happens when you don't draw your combo pieces? What happens when you draw your combo pieces and you have to block? These are all it's very, very easy to. A lot of decks are actually fairly easy to play if you are not under pressure. You have the tempo. Everything is, you're drawing everything correctly. But where you really a certain percentage of games are unwinnable, a certain percentage of games are unlosable, right? But we have to play for the majority of games where if we really do everything correctly, if we manage what we can manage, if we manage the variance and all that, we can improve, right? And we can get an advantage, and we can win those matchups that are hard, right? There's a quote here that I quite like that says, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." So that's what I'm talking about earlier. Is it's easy to pilot combo Bolton when everything's going smoothly. It's when things are going really poorly. This is where good players separate themselves, right? So not every game is going to go smoothly for you. You need to learn. This is why in practice, I like to, if I know some people, they just want to play, normal practice games. However, at a certain point, that's fine for a bit, but eventually it's those fringe cases that actually can improve your win rate by 10-15%. Knowing how to handle these situations is very, very important. All right, so knowing how to handle superior and inferior forces is very important in this game. All right, let's go to the final quote. Sun Tzu says, "Ponder and deliberate before you make a move." So, I think this is fairly straightforward. You've seen other people maybe, and also I'm very guilty of this also, is moving too quickly, especially through you're either taking shortcuts that you're not supposed to be taking, you're missing triggers that you're not supposed to be missing, things like tunic, stuff like that. All right. It's important to play quickly, but it's also important to play with thought. And when you draw up your new hand, you need to consider, I like to consider my whole turn when I draw, right? I should know exactly what I'm doing after I block, what I'm doing on offense, right? And it's also important to think a little bit more on defense. That way your timing on offense is consistent. If a good example of this is if I'm playing, I'm going to use Dorinthia because that's my classic hero, right? She's over there, as you might be able to tell. the speed at which I make decisions actually gives away things. So I've learned to think about my whole turn on defense. If I block really quickly and then it goes to my turn and I have to think, that often means that I have like, it's easier to put me on a hand if it's taking me time to think on offense. And I want that to be more consistent, basically. Sequencing is extremely important on offense because this is, especially in a wide attack pattern, this is often how you get your advantage, is which attacks are you leading with, which attacks are you following up with. This is very, very important for Phi. Very, very important for Briar, Ketsu, Lexi, anybody that plays their cards out over the course of the turn rather than in one big burst like Bravo would. It's extremely important to sequence your cards correctly. And this is something that's not talked about much, is that hesitation, or the speed at which you make decisions gives away a lot of information. So I would try to think out your whole turn, especially if you're playing a hero that's very, very that is very, very difficult to block. I'd really, really emphasize that you think about your whole turn on defense. All right. Anyways, just in general, thinking about your turn, remembering your triggers is very, very important. All right. All right. So just to summarize the episode 8, episode 9, basically it comes down to applying the correct strategy, tactics, and game knowledge will lead you to victory. There's a lot of things that you can learn from the book. These are just 6 of my favorite quotes. The whole book is very, very good. If you have a chance, have a read. It's quite nice. So yeah, moving forward, we're going to be looking at, I have an episode planned with playing to your opponent's level. And then after that, we're going to be looking at the Uprising meta. That should be, Road to Nationals. That should be in full swing. So that'll be very, very interesting. So yeah, this is Josh with bringing you episode number 9 of Fab 201. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below. All right, take care. See ya.